The metal chair was cold against Leo Cruz's back. He stared at the main screen, his eyes dry from lack of sleep. The hum of the Karen station's life support was the only sound. It was a lonely sound. For 3 years, this deep space listening post had been his home and his prison. His console beeped, a soft, routine sound. Another energy signature from the Kuiper belt. He opened the report file. He had written so many. He typed the same words again. Anomalous reading. Source unknown. Recommend further investigation. He sent it to Earth Command. He knew what the response would be. He did not have to wait long. The comlink chimed. A text message appeared on his secondary screen. The words were sharp and clear. Cruz, another sensor ghost? Your systems need calibration. Stop wasting Command's time. Leo clenched his jaw. He typed a reply. The signature is real. The pattern is consistent. It is not a ghost. The answer came back faster this time. The war is over, Cruz. There are no monsters in the dark, just shadows. Stand down. He looked at the star map on his main screen. The little red dot blinked, far out beyond Pluto. A shadow. He was so tired of shadows. Then the screen turned white. A sound ripped through the station, a deafening screech from the audio sensors. Leo slammed his hands on the console, killing the sound. His heart hammered against his ribs. The main screen cleared. It was not a shadow. Ships, hundreds of them. They appeared from nothing, silent and sudden. They were massive, shaped like dark, jagged insects. They filled the screen. Their number was impossible. They moved as one, a swarm of black metal against the stars. This was the Cathar Empire. The story parents told to scare their children. It was all true. His fingers flew across the console. He opened a channel to Earth. This was the Widowmaker alert, the one you never send unless it is the end. Karen, station to Earth Command. Priority 1. I have a hostile fleet emerging from the Kuiper belt. They are crossing the Neptune orbital line. Do you copy? A voice, fuzzy with static and annoyance, crackled back. Karen, this is Command. Verify your signal. Are you certain this is not another drill? It is not a drill, Leo shouted, his voice cracking. Look at my feed. They are real. He watched the fleet's progress on the tracker. They were moving fast. Too fast. They would reach Earth in hours. He saw the lead ship, a colossal dreadnought, change its course by a fraction. It was not heading for Earth. Not yet. It was pointing toward Jupiter. The Galileo Fortress, Jupiter's orbital defense platform, was a bright icon on his screen. It was the symbol of human strength, a city in space. The dreadnought fired. A beam of green light, thinner than a needle from this distance, lanced across the solar system. It hit the Galileo Fortress. There was no sound. There was no explosion. The fortress simply glowed, bright green for a single second. Then it was gone. Vaporized. The icon on his screen vanished. Leo froze. His breath caught in his throat. The comm line was silent for a long moment. Then the voice from Command returned, small and broken. Karen, what was that? Leo did not answer them. He switched to an open channel, to every ship and station that could hear him. His voice was a raw, desperate thing. They're here. All stations. They're... A wave of static hit the station. The lights died. The screens went black. The hum of the life support choked into silence. In the sudden, absolute dark, Leo Cruz was alone. The only light came from the viewport. The swarm of enemy ships flew past his dead station, ignoring him. They blotted out the stars as they moved toward the small blue world he called home. The air in Chicago tasted of smoke and burned plastic. Frank Kelso crouched behind the broken wall of what was once a bank. He looked at the people with him. A dozen faces, smeared with dirt and fear. A young soldier named Joe held a rifle with shaking hands. An older woman, Helen, clutched a medical kit. A shadow passed over them. Frank looked up. A Cathar dropship, a black shape like a giant bug, moved slowly across the sky. It was looking for something. For them. "Stay down," Frank whispered. He was a pilot, or he had been. His fighter was a pile of scrap metal at the airfield. Now he was just a man with a gun, trying to keep people alive. The dropship fired. A bolt of green energy hit a building 2 blocks away. The building fell apart with a terrible roar. Dust and debris rained down on them. "We can't fight that," Joe said, his voice thin with panic. "We don't have to fight it," Frank said. "We just have to survive." They moved through the broken streets. Their goal was the old subway tunnels. Maybe they could hide there. Maybe they could live. They found a broken military transport truck. Its radio was smashed, but a small comms unit was still powered on. It was scanning, searching for any signal. A voice crackled from the speaker. It was weak, full of static. "They're here. All stations, they're—" Then nothing, just the hiss of empty air. "Who was that?" Helen asked. Frank did not know, but the voice was familiar. It was the same one they had heard days ago. The crazy warning from the edge of the solar system. The one everyone ignored. "Play it again," Frank said. Joe worked the controls. The message repeated, but this time Frank heard something else. Under the voice there was a low, repeating sound. A data stream. "Can you clean that up?" Frank asked. The sound underneath his words. Joe nodded, his fingers moving carefully. He filtered out the voice. What was left was a string of numbers and symbols. A technical readout. "It's a scan," Joe said, his eyes wide. "It's a scan of one of their ships. It's a shield frequency." He got a reading on their shields just before the signal died. Frank stared at the data. It was a ghost. A message from a dead man. A tiny, fleeting weakness. "We have a missile left," Frank said. "The one from the crashed fighter. We can use that." "It's one missile," Helen said. "Against that." She pointed at the dropship in the distance. "We don't need to kill it," Frank said. "We just need to see if this is real." They set up the launcher on the roof of a broken garage. Joe wired the missile's guidance system to emit the frequency from Leo's scan. It was a desperate, stupid plan. The dropship turned. It came toward them, its engines a low, angry hum. "Now," Frank said. Joe fired the missile. It shot into the sky, a thin trail of smoke behind it. The dropship's shields glowed, a shimmering green shell. The missile hit the shield. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the missile passed right through. The green shield did not stop it. The warhead slammed into the ship's metal hull. The explosion was bright and loud. Pieces of black metal fell from the sky, crashing into the streets below. The dropship spun out of control and slammed into a tower. A fireball bloomed against the gray sky. A cheer went up from the people on the roof. Joe laughed, a sound of pure relief. They had done it. They had hurt them. Frank did not cheer. He watched the burning wreck. He saw a smaller ship, a scout, detached from the main Cathar fleet high above the city. It descended quickly, heading straight for the crash site. A new voice came over the comms unit. It was not human. It was a harsh, clicking sound. Then a single, translated word filled the silent air. "Interesting." The word "interesting" hung in the air like a poison. Frank felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. This was no longer a fight for survival. It was a lab experiment, and they were the rats. 2 days later, he was in a makeshift command bunker deep beneath the city. Pipes dripped water onto the concrete floor. The air smelled of damp earth and sweat. A general with a tired face stood in front of him. His name was Briggs. "Your stunt got their attention, Kelso," Briggs said. "Now we use it. You're leading a new unit, Hammerfall. Your mission is to hit their command node in the old government plaza." Frank looked at the holographic map. The node was a towering spire of alien metal, pulsing with green light. It was the brain controlling their ground forces in North America. "We have a small window," Briggs continued. Their shields use a rotating frequency now, but our techs think they have a pattern. We hit them when they are most vulnerable. That night, Hammerfall moved out. 10 men and women in dark combat gear. Frank led them through the empty subway tunnels. The only sound was their breathing and the distant rumble of the alien machines above. They emerged into a cityscape of fire and shadow. The command spire stood in the distance, a needle of black against the burning sky. Alien patrols stalked the streets. "Go," Frank whispered into his comm. They moved fast and quiet. They used the broken city as their cover. They reached the edge of the plaza. It was a wide, open space. No cover. The spire stood in the center, its base guarded by 4 heavy walkers. "Now," Frank ordered. Human fighters screamed in from the east, a diversion. The alien walkers turned their guns toward the sky. It was their chance. Hammerfall sprinted across the plaza. They were halfway there when the trap sprung. The spire's shields did not just rotate, they vanished completely. The walkers turned back, their weapons already aimed. Green energy bolts tore into his team. Frank saw Joe disappear in a flash of light. He saw Helen fall, her medkit scattering across the pavement. "Fall back!" Frank yelled, but it was too late. A blast hit the ground next to him. The world went white. He was thrown through the air. He landed hard, his head hitting broken concrete. When he woke up, he was being dragged. 2 hulking Cathar soldiers held his arms. Their armor was cold and hard. They pulled him into the base of the spire. The air was thick with a strange chemical smell. He was thrown onto the metal floor in a large, circular room. In front of him stood a Cathar commander. It was taller than the others. Its multifaceted eyes glowed with a cold, green light. It did not speak at first. It just looked at him. Then a translator device on its chest buzzed to life. "You are the persistent one." The voice was a flat, electronic monotone. "You break a ship. You think you are winning a war. You do not understand." Frank struggled to stand. "Then explain it to me." "The Cathar do not conquer for territory. We do not conquer for resources. We conquer for perfection. We absorb the strongest traits of a species. We make them our own. Your people. You are fragile. But you fight. You defy logic. You have a spirit. That is a trait we lack. That is a trait we desire." Frank stared, his blood running cold. This was not an invasion. It was a harvest. They were not here to kill humanity. They were here to consume it, to erase what they were and turn it into a weapon for the Empire. The commander gestured with a clawed hand. A section of the wall slid open. It was not a cell. It was a pit, filled with other human prisoners. They looked thin and haunted. "See your future," the commander said. Frank was shoved forward. He stumbled and fell into the pit. He landed on the hard floor, his body aching. The door slid shut above him, leaving them in near darkness. A man crawled over to him. His face was bruised, his clothes torn, but his eyes were sharp and clear. Frank recognized him from the mission briefings, the face of the man who gave the warning. Leo Cruz looked down at Frank, his voice a dry whisper. "The invasion isn't the end," he said. "It's the harvest." The words, "the harvest," hung in the dark, suffocating air. Frank looked at Leo Cruz. The man was just a ghost from a broken transmission. Now he was real, and his eyes held a terrible truth. "They are taking people," Leo whispered, "to a processing facility. They extract genetic material. They call it the refining." Frank felt a cold sickness in his gut. This was worse than death. "We are not going to be refined," Frank said, his voice low and hard. He spent the next hour moving through the pit. He spoke to the other prisoners. He found a mix of soldiers and civilians. Their hope was gone. He had to put it back. He laid out a plan. It was a bad plan. It was a desperate plan. It was all they had. Their chance came during a shift change of guards. A Cathar engineer, smaller than the soldiers, entered the pit to check a faulty light panel on the wall. It was careless. It was alone. Frank moved fast. He did not use his fists. He used his words. He stood between the engineer and the door. He spoke calmly, looking into its glowing eyes. "They will refine you too, one day," Frank said, "when they find a better engineer. You're just a tool to them." The engineer froze. Its claws twitched. A long moment passed. Then it made a soft, clicking sound. It was not a sound of anger. It was a sound of agreement. It pointed a thin claw toward the door control panel and tapped a specific sequence. The door slid open. Chaos erupted. The prisoners surged out into the corridor. Alarms blared, a sharp, piercing wail. Green emergency lights flashed. The Cathar engineer melted away into the shadows, gone. "To the data spire," Leo yelled over the noise. "The central core. We can hurt them more there than with a bomb." They fought their way upward. They used pipes as clubs and stolen tools as weapons. It was close, ugly fighting in the tight metallic halls. Cathar soldiers, caught by surprise, fell under the weight of a dozen enraged humans. But for every alien that fell, a human fell too. Frank saw a young woman who had shared her water with him get cut down by an energy blast. He did not stop. They reached the core. It was a vast, circular room. In the center, a pillar of light and data rose to the ceiling. This was the brain of the North American invasion. Leo ran to a console. His fingers flew across the alien interface. "I can access their genetic database. I can find the location of their main repository world. I can send it to everyone." Frank turned to the door. Buy him time. The remaining survivors, just 5 of them now, formed a ragged line. They aimed their stolen weapons at the corridor. They did not have to wait long. The Cathar commander appeared. He stood at the end of the hall, his personal guard behind him. He did not order an attack. He walked forward alone. His heavy steps echoed in the room. Frank met him in the middle. There were no words. The commander swung his massive claw. Frank ducked under it. He fired his energy rifle point-blank into the commander's chest. The blast did nothing. The armor smoked, but held. The commander backhanded Frank. He flew across the room and hit the wall. Pain exploded in his side. He struggled to get up, his vision blurry. "I have it," Leo shouted. "The data is streaming. The location is going out." The commander turned from Frank. He saw Leo at the console. He saw the data flowing. He raised his arm, a weapon barrel emerging from his wrist. He aimed at Leo's back. Frank was on the ground. He was too far away. He had no weapon. He could not stop it. Leo looked away from the screen. He looked at Frank. He saw the commander taking aim. There was no fear in his eyes, only resolve. He slammed his hand down on a large red button on the console that neither of them had touched before. A loud, grinding roar filled the room. "Go!" Leo screamed at Frank. The central pillar of light flickered wildly. The floor began to shake. A deep hum grew into a deafening whine. The commander staggered, his shot going wide. Leo Cruz did not run. He stood his ground, his hands still on the console, making sure the data kept flowing. He looked at Frank one last time as a white energy began to crackle up from the floor, swallowing him whole. The self-destruct had been activated. The spire was coming down, and Leo was staying to make sure it did. The world was fire and noise. Frank ran. A wave of heat chased him down the corridor. It was the breath of the explosion. He felt it burn his back. He did not look behind him. He could not. He stumbled out of a shattered service exit just as the command spire tore itself apart. A pillar of white fire shot into the sky. The ground shook. Pieces of black metal rained down for a full minute. Frank lay on the broken ground, coughing dust. He was the only one who made it out. Weeks passed. Frank healed. His body healed anyway. His mind was a different thing. It was filled with the image of Leo Cruz standing in the fire, a ghost who had saved them all. The data Leo sent changed everything. Human engineers now understood the Cathar. They learned their shield patterns. They even learned to build their own silent jump drives. They built a new kind of ship. Small, fast, deadly. They called it the Cruise's Vengeance. Frank stood in its hangar bay. The ship was all sharp angles and black paint. It looked like a shadow. He was its commander. General Briggs stood beside him. The plan is simple, Kelso. You jump past their blockade. You get onto the flagship, the World Eater. You upload Leo's weapon into its core. You end this. Frank just nodded. He was not a major anymore. He was not a pilot. He was a tool for one last, sharp job. The Cruise's Vengeance slipped through the enemy lines like a knife. It was quiet. It was dark. It moved through the blind spots Leo's data had revealed. The massive Cathar fleet hung in orbit around Earth, unaware. Then they saw it. The World Eater. It was not a ship. It was a mountain of black metal. It was the heart of the invasion. Frank looked at it. He felt nothing. No fear, no anger, just a cold purpose. "Take us in," he said. The Cruise's Vengeance flew straight at the flagship. It did not fire. It did not slow down. It aimed for a small hangar bay near the ship's command tower. The impact was violent. Metal screamed. The small ship buried itself in the side of the giant. The bay doors sealed shut behind them, locking them in. "Go!" Frank yelled. His team, 10 veterans in heavy armor, stormed out. They fought through the surprised Cathar guards. The corridors were a mess of alien shapes and flashing lights. Frank led from the front. His rifle fired again and again. He did not feel the enemy fire that hit his armor. He just moved forward. They blasted through the final door onto the bridge. It was huge. A wide, dark room with a massive viewport showing the Earth below. The Cathar Fleetmaster stood in the center. He turned slowly. He was larger than the other commanders. His eyes glowed with a calm, ancient light. His translator buzzed. "The persistent one. You have come far for a specimen." Frank raised his rifle. His team fanned out, aiming their weapons. "You will not shoot," the Fleetmaster said. "You are curious. You want to know why. You want to understand your purpose." Frank said nothing. "Your species has a sickness," the Fleetmaster continued. "You call it defiance. We call it potential. Join us. Lead our new human legion. Your spirit, combined with our strength. It is a better future than death." He gestured to the viewport, to the world below. It was a real offer. Frank looked at the Earth. It was scarred and burning. He thought of Leo. He thought of Joe and Helen. He thought of the harvest. He lowered his rifle. He walked toward the Fleetmaster. The alien stood tall, a look of satisfaction in its eyes. Frank stopped in front of the main command console. He did not look at the Fleetmaster. He pulled a data spike from his belt. It contained Leo's final gift, not a virus, a poison, a genetic command. He jammed the spike into the console. The Fleetmaster roared and lunged, but it was too late. A wave of invisible energy pulsed from the World Eater. It washed over the entire Cathar fleet. On the main viewport, the lights on one enemy ship flickered, then another, and another, like candles going out. The ships did not explode. They just went dark. Their engines died. Their power faded. They became silent, dead tombs in the void. The Fleetmaster staggered. He clutched his chest. A low, pained click came from his throat. He collapsed to the floor, his body twitching. The war was over. Frank stood on the quiet bridge. He looked down at the dead Fleetmaster. Then he looked at the Earth. They had won. He had saved them all. He felt the weight of every life lost to buy this victory. He felt the ghost of Leo Cruz in the silence. He had become the monster that killed monsters. And he knew, as he stared at the peaceful, burning world, that the man he had been was never coming home.